What's up, y'all? It's TruthTiger, and I recently had a huge spiritual breakthrough. This happened to me 2 days ago, and I want to talk about this. It's going to be kind of a tough video to make, but I'm going to try to describe things the very best that I can. So yeah, I was at home after work, just chilling, just kind of thinking on things, meditating on things, praying a little bit, ruminating, and something just hit me. And it was massive. It was huge. It was big. It made me dizzy. I had to lie down. It was just like my ears were ringing. It was just like something just huge just came out of my head. And I really realized just how good and evil have been twisted up so much. And I realized that there were things that I did in the past that I thought were for good, that I thought were for God, that I thought were for truth, that I thought were for love and kindness, but really were for evil. And I realized that throughout my life, I had the devil in my mind, and he was switching up good and evil, and he was making me think that evil things were good, and he was making me think that good things were evil, and he was in my mind twisting things up very subtly. I don't want to lose anybody here, be too weird with it, but this is what I experienced and what I saw. And it's one thing to say this, it's one thing to know this in your mind, but to feel this in your heart, to feel this deep in your guts, it was almost too much for me. I felt like I wanted to faint, it was crazy. It really was crazy. And this is not just happening to me, but this is happening to everyone. And it's I really believe that societal programming and submission to just authority and chasing money, and I really thought that was good. I really thought that just this religious way of thinking was for God, and it wasn't. And I was very confused. I was very confused. I thought that following the quote-unquote rules made me a good person, and it didn't. And I thought I had to make everyone think the way I thought, and I thought I had to, push what I was doing onto other people. And I didn't. I really didn't. And there was ways that I embarrassed myself when I thought I was doing the right thing and I wasn't. And there was ways where I was bossy to other people and I thought that I was doing the right thing and I wasn't. And it's very hard to describe, but it's the truth, and it's all I could say about it. And it's the devil tricks us to put us in this mindset that we have to submit to this false idea of God, this false idea of goodness, this false love. And this false love involves submitting to some societal BS and following some weird rules and having a false idea of God, a false idea of goodness. And then it's we go through that humiliation ritual, and then we then get to push it onto other people, and we get to boss other people around with it. So it's we'll put the chains on ourselves so we can throw them onto other people. And I really just I realized I was doing this, and I realized that everyone in the world around me is doing this. And part of the reason why I'm catching so much hate and I'm going through so much BS right now is because I stopped that paradigm, and I was no more of this. And pretty much everyone in the world is doing this on some level. Everyone in the world is doing this. I mean, it even says in the Bible that even the elect of God will be deceived by the great beast, will be deceived by society. And that was me. I was deceived. And I had to take a few days just to process how deceived I was. The devil was in my mind, putting thoughts in my mind, and I thought those thoughts were coming from God. I mean, really, I mean, that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. And the thing is, the thoughts in our mind come from God, they come from us, they come from our own ego, or they come from the devil. Pretty much is how it works. Most people are so unconscious and are so asleep that they don't recognize that. They don't even know where their thoughts come from. That just a thought appears from somewhere. But that's the truth of it. And the devil really, like, he masqueraded as an angel of light, and he fooled me. He fooled me. And the thing is like the devil makes you feel scared. He comes in as this like authoritarian dominator kind of figure. He's this authoritarian dominator, and it's just like you follow these rules, and that's good, that's moral, that's ethical. You follow the rules and you bow down, and then you make other people bow down too. And that whole mentality, it's just to appeal to ego. It's just to appeal to ego. And I'm going to be all over the place in this video. There's no way for me to like perfectly connect these threads. This is a deep video. This is an esoteric video. And I'm just trying to come to grips with all this and figure all this out, because it's really messing with my mind. It's really messing with my mind. And I talk about kind of stuff that's similar to this, but to really viscerally experience this is crazy. It's really crazy. Like, I remember I was just realizing, like, so much stuff I did I thought was good before I really woke up. And I had this moment where I'm like, all this stuff I was doing was like for naught. It was for nothing. I was making sacrifices, you know, and thinking I'm doing the right thing for nothing. And I'll throw some context in here of my own life to help you guys out. When I grew up, I was an Orthodox Jew, so I was a very religious, like fundamentalist kind of Jew, and I was in this very cult-like environment. I had to wear certain clothes, I had to go away to these different schools, and you know, that's kind of where this false idea of God started, of God as this angry man who has these crazy irrational rules he wants you to follow, and he also wants you to shame other people who don't follow these rules. And you know, it's I'm struggling to describe the psychology of it, the outside of it, of being in this religious kind of cult-like environment. I can make some sense of, but the psychology underneath of it, I'm making sense of that too, but it's tough. I'm struggling. And then after coming out of that, you know, I spent a couple of years kind of just, you know, struggling for stuff, struggling to find meaning. I got involved in the New Age, and again, was deceived. And the thing about the New Age is they take everything and try to make it into like some positive thing. And there's negative things that are not positive. Everything's not all love and not all like love and sunshine. Everything is not all love and kindness. Like, there's evil out there, and the New Age does not acknowledge the evil that is out there, does not give you weapons to fight against the evil that's out there. And a lot of the New Age stuff is just some weird sales pitch. They're trying to get you to like buy these courses, and there are these self-proclaimed gurus who are trying to get you to buy their books or whatever. And I mean, honestly, the New Age is like, there's a lot of people that seem like they're just straight up cult leaders. I never got involved in that like person to person. It was more just like videos that I was watching and stuff I was reading about online. But I got involved in that, and I thought that was so nice and so positive, and it's all love, and there's no hate. It's like there is hate, and a lot of these people are very fake and are very passive aggressive. And a lot of the New Age also, it's like if you had something bad happen to you, it's because you manifested it. You had a bad thought, and then something bad happened to you. And it's like, that's not how things become manifest. Like, one, there is God, there is our creator, he manifests things. There's the devil, the evil one, he's trying to manifest things. There's other people, and we're all in this environment, and they're trying to manifest things, good and evil. And then there's little us, and we're manifesting things too. And it's like you're in this big pool, and it's like, yeah, we're manifesting things, but it's like we're part of a much bigger system. We're part of a much bigger clockwork. And this idea that that everything you do, you manifest, it's like solipsistic and self-centered and weird. And it's like, I don't know, it's also like if something bad happens to you, it's not your fault. It's like, no, you manifested it. It's your fault. So, I don't know, it's a very weird, toxic, like, kind of way of thinking. And then, when I found Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is the real deal, but when I found him, I became involved in the church, and they have this, like, fake idea of Jesus. Like, the people in the church, like, they worship a false Christ. It's very scary the way this deception goes, and it's like, the people in the church, they're very fake about it. They're, like, embarrassed about it, but at the same time, there's a whole thing of, like, you have to, like, go around and tell everybody about Jesus and, like, humiliate yourself and, like, step over people's boundaries. And I did a little bit of that, and it was not good for me. It wasn't really the way you're supposed to. It's not the way you're supposed to teach about Jesus to people. You got to set a good example, but just this way to, like, be, like, I don't, like, angry, like, why don't they believe in Jesus? I believe in Jesus, they have to. It's like this angry kind of thing, and I fell into that a bit. And I just fell into, like, a mindset that was not realistic. I just fell into a mindset that's not realistic. And the thing about this, like, this false god that the devil's putting in our mind, it works alongside our ego. All this stuff is, like, ego appealing. Like, when I go back to my childhood as an Orthodox Jew with all these crazy rules and all this crazy mishigas I'm having to grow up with, and there's, like, a rule between how long you can eat meat and milk, because, in the Old Testament it says don't boil a calf in their mother's milk. And then over the years, all these crazy rabbis and scholars who are egotistical, they make up all these nonsense rules, and now you gotta wait 3 to 6 hours between eating meat and milk. And it's just a whole, like, lifestyle like that I grew up in. And that appeals to the ego because there's these clear, defined rules. And you follow those rules, and then if other people don't, you get to shame them and, like, boss them around and be like, oh, you're not following the rules, And I grew up like that, and, there was a whole thing of, like, guilt and shame. But at the same time, it's like, I wear the chains, I put on the leash, so I can boss you around too. I get whipped, so now I can take that whip and whip you around too. And it's just that weird mentality, and that appeals to ego. And then with all the new age stuff, it's, like, so, like, fake positive and so, like, just telling people what they want to hear. And it's so just like, we're all gonna manifest $1 million and a Porsche 911 Turbo, and we're gonna manifest inner peace at the same time too. And I don't know, a lot of the new age stuff is very materialistic too. It's like a lot of it goes from, like, manifesting inner peace to, like, before you know it, you're trying to manifest a Porsche and a house, and it's like, whoa, like, this got really materialistic. And a lot of it's about manifesting money, and it's nothing wrong with having money, whatever, but it's just a lot of it becomes a love of money. And that stuff's very ego appealing. And, like, it's very, like, I don't know, it's very selfish and stuff. It seems all nice, but it's pretty selfish and weird. And, then going to the church, it's, like, kind of a combination of both. You have some of, like, this, like, rule-following hypocrisy where people are all judgmental and, like, oh, I heard so-and-so smoked a cigarette, let's gossip about it and stuff. And, people twist up the Bible and they throw these Bible verses at you, and I don't know, and you have these group prayer things, and everyone's trying to, like, say the better prayer than other people, and a lot of people have, like, deep problems inside, and instead of dealing with those problems, and instead of bettering themselves, they're just saying, Jesus, Jesus, And a lot of people are also foregoing morals and ethics. They're going to say, well, Jesus saved us, and it's not through works, it's through faith, so therefore I don't have to be a good person. And they're just twisting the Bible up to, like, forego any need for morals or ethics, to forego any need to, like, love their fellow and do the right thing. And it's just like, man, it's just this whole twisted up version of things, and it appeals to people's egos, and they do it as a collective, and it just becomes the norm. It becomes the norm, and everyone's doing it around you, so you get wrapped up in it. Even so, people think that like not jaywalking is like some high form of morality. It's not. I mean, there's a small level of morals to that, I guess, but people think that like obeying the authorities is like some kind of high morals and ethics, and it's not. It's really not. It's just like the devil's way of like, you follow these clear defined rules, and but the rules are not actually clear defined, and they're changing, they don't make sense, but people think it's like, well, the rule's written out, and you follow that written out rule, and that makes you a good person. Being a good person is about loving your fellow. Being a good person is about having love in your heart, and treating people with love and kindness, and going around and being this person with a stick up your butt who wants to boss other people around, who wants to put a guilt trip on people, who wants to force people to conform to their societal programming, doesn't make you a good person. Being all obsessed with politics and being all angry at the people who are on the other side or whatever doesn't make you a good person. It's just like all this stuff. It's really nuts. It's really, really nuts. But there's a silver lining. When I realized that, like, I'm like, man, I did all this stuff. I sacrificed so much for 666 for the beast. And I thought that was God, but it was the beast of society. And I was feeling stupid. I felt like I got duped. I got scammed. I got taken advantage of. I got manipulated. I felt stupid, but I also just felt like, man, I felt terrible. I felt angry. I felt weird. I just felt bad. And the true voice of the Lord came into my mind, and he said it was for, that I will turn this for good. I will make a good purpose out of this. I will lift you up very, very high. The true voice of God. And the true voice of God is the voice of the Good Shepherd. The true voice of God it's kind, it's loving, it's soothing. And I had this very powerful spiritual moment where God was in my mind, and his voice was gentle and kind, and he wasn't condemning me, and he wasn't telling me I'm stupid, and he wasn't, pushing me down. He was just telling me I'm going to lift you up. He's telling me I'm going to lift you up very, very high. And I just had these spiritual moments, very powerful spiritual moments. I started to just imagine things. I just imagined myself walking down this beautiful corridor. I was kind of like out of it a little bit when a lot of this was happening. So I don't remember this stuff that well, but I remember I was just walking. In my mind, I could see this beautiful corridor. And I'm much more of a left-brained, analytical kind of person. I don't imagine like images or pictures very well. Most of the time when I dream, my dreams are like kind of in black and white, or not much color, or it's very abstract, I'm an abstract person. And I saw this like hallway in my mind. It was like insane detail. It was like insane detail. It looked like real life. And I was like, man, my imagination, I can just imagine an image that's crystal clear. How am I able to have a crystal clear image in my mind? And I realized God was working on me. And God was working on me to get my mind in balance. Society and the Matrix purposely programs us to have either a left or a right brain imbalance. And if you have a left brain imbalance, it's like, it's doom, it's gloom, it's nihilism, everyone sucks. I ran the numbers, I crunched the data, this calculation doesn't work. I don't know, it just gets you in this like overly analytical, angry, annoyed mindset where you're like, these numbers don't add up, so I can't even do it. And then if you're in a right brain imbalance, like you're just like overly idealistic, you're not looking at the numbers, you're not really having any strategy for anything, you're just like way too naive. I don't know, the left and right brain imbalance, that's a whole separate topic, but I could feel my brain coming into balance, and I'm like, my imagination, I've always been creative and imaginative, but I could never see a clear image like that. Never in my dreams, never in anything. Just the clearest image I've ever seen, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And then the next day, I got this name. I'm not going to say the name of this that I got. I'm not going to invoke this on here, but I got the name of a demon, and I was able to call that demon out in the name of Jesus. And it was like, again, that name just came to me, and I could just see that demon was like tied to like my ancestors. I don't want to say too much on that, but I was like, man, I kicked that big demon out. I was like, whoa, I'm just making spiritual progress here. I was waking up a lot earlier. I didn't want to sleep in anymore. It was just like, whoa, what's going on? I could feel like a log being pulled out of my mind. Just like a big rock, a big log, a big obstruction. Just yanked out of my brain. It was like Satan had just put some big blockage in my mind, and I could see the blockage just being completely removed. And the thing about this phenomenon, it's not a new phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that's been going on for a long time. And if you look at the Old Testament, a lot of the reason why God in the Old Testament is like, I'm God Almighty, I'm the jealous God, I'm this. A lot of the reason why God comes across as much more of a dominating figure in the Old Testament is because when the fallen angels fell down to earth, and I mean, like, Satan's on the earth with us. Like, it says in the book of Revelations that Satan was thrown down onto the earth. He's on the earth right now. You read the book of Enoch about the Nephilim being thrown down. So you had like these, and just stay with me here, folks. Please stay with me here. Keep an open mind. But you had these like kind of demigod kind of beings going around. You had like Gilgamesh. You had like Odin and Thor and Loki, and I don't know what all their names actually were, but you had, I don't know, King Minowas, Hercules, whatever. I don't know who all was what or whatever. I'm just kind of saying, but you had these kind of like beings, you know, going around. They were probably giants. And they were like these quote unquote gods among men. And they're like, oh, ha, ha, I am powerful. You puny little mortals, I'll crush you. You know, they were like that. And they got people to bow down and submit to them. And it was very much like, bow down before me, you know. And they were these kind of dominator-like people. And when someone's in a state of mind of ego, the ego is like, I'm in charge. Unless someone, you know, really slaps me on the head, unless you can take my head and shove it in the dirt, I'm not gonna submit to you. You know, people have that mindset. They're very egotistical. So when some other more egotistical, you know, person or being or whatever I want to call these things comes around, people's egos really like that. They're like, well, he's big, he's strong, he shoved my face in the ground and showed me who was boss. And ego kind of likes that. The ego likes like this, like, ego likes all this dominance and submission and stuff. And I'm going really deep in this video. I'm revealing a lot of secrets in this video, but that's why people like in the sexuality, I struggle with this personally, but there's a lot of stuff in the sexuality where it's like you either want to control someone or be controlled, and people find that kind of dominance and submission stuff. It's very deep in the sexuality. It's because of like how the ego is, and I don't know. I mean, it's kind of confusing, but yeah, staying on track here. And getting back to it, it's like you had these Nephilim, and they were like the gods among men. And then this idea of like a god, you know, came into people's minds. And the thing is like Jesus refers to God as my heavenly Father. In the book of Enoch, God's referred to as the Great Spirit. God calls himself the Good Shepherd a lot. But the thing is, in the Old Testament times, and even now, it's like people needed like an authoritarian dominator. So God's like, all right, I have the strength. You know, I need to kind of come in and show some authority to these people. It's not the ideal way to do things, but I got to get through to people. I have to get through to people. So God had to make himself as like this powerful authoritarian, like, because back in the day, it's like you have, I don't know, you had the gods of the Babylonians, and it's like, well, if you mess with our gods, they'll crush you. And then, I don't know, the Egyptians were like, no, the Egyptian gods are the strongest. They'll crush you. They're 30 feet tall, and they throw lightning bolts, and you don't even want to mess with them. They'll hammer you into the ground, So now God's like, all right, now I got to show them that I'm the true God, and that I'm stronger than all these so-called gods. I got to show them who's really in charge, And the thing is, the ego of the people was in such a way back then that, if you read the book of Exodus 7, God says to Moses, I will make you as God in front of the Pharaoh. So the Pharaohs their faith was not good. They were very egotistical. So now Moses has to come in as this like God among men. He has to come in and he has to be like, you do what I say. I'll crush you if you don't. I'll turn the Nile River red. The Pharaoh's heart was still hardened, but, so they needed that. So the Pharaoh go, oh man, like, I got to take this guy seriously. He means business, because they don't have love, And when people can step out of a state of ego, they don't need like an authoritarian dominator. There is authority, of course. God is in charge, but it's not like he's not trying to make himself into this big authoritarian dominator. But the problem is the hearts of the people and the hearts of most people need to see God that way. And that kind of gives strength to this deception. It gives power to this deception. And that's why with certain people, and even with Abraham, like Abraham was like a warlord. He had soldiers, like he was someone who, and Abraham, God bless him, obviously, he's one of the saints, he's one of the prophets, but he on some level also needed this kind of like, he needed God to be this like ultimate authoritarian, because if you look at the mythology of the old world, it's very much about like Hercules is so strong, Zeus is it's all about like, because the ego likes that. The ego likes that type of thing. But that's not really the nature of God. The nature of God is about love. The nature of God's about truth, is about kindness. And yeah, God has the strength to do whatever. God's in charge of the show. But God's humble. God's the most humble in the world. God doesn't like need us to bow down to him. I don't even think there's very much stuff about it. When it talks about like the prophets meeting God, it says they fell down before the Lord. It doesn't really say they bowed down. It says they fell down because like his glory was so great and so immense, they literally swept him off their feet. That's what it says. And when Jesus says every knee shall bend, every knee shall bow, it's not quite saying like, oh, I'm gonna come here, and I'm gonna say bow down, you little knaves, whatever. It's more just like they're going to recognize who's really in charge of this. They're going to recognize that goodness and love and kindness, and the one who embodies it runs the show, and every knee shall bend, because they're like, all right, that is what we need to bow down to. And that's why you also worship the Lord, because you worship what he represents. Love, kindness, truth, knowledge. You worship those attributes, and you put those attributes up on the high altar, and you say, that's above me. But it's not like God has this big ego and is like, I need these people to worship me, God's not like that. God's not this like angry, egotistical person. And I think most people's image of God is one of just an angry, egotistical person. And the thing about an image that we hold in our mind, on a computer, an image is the operating system. So we have the image of the beast. The devil's operating system, is running on us right now. I don't know what you'd call that, Windows 11, or whatever operating system you don't like, but that's running. Whereas God wants us to have his image in our mind. But by default, we have the devil's crap plugged in there. And the devil is subtly manipulating our idea of what God is. And not just God, but our idea of what goodness is itself. Our idea of what love is itself. Our idea of what truth is itself. The devil has twisted it up, so we think that truth is whoever gaslights the hardest. We think that truth is whatever the most people choose to believe. We don't think of truth as being absolute. I do. I think of truth as being absolute, and I think a lot of y'all watching this do because you guys are woken up, but I didn't used to think of truth like that. I used to really not have a concept of truth. Truth is just whatever most people believe. Truth is what the narrative is. Truth is whoever gaslights and manipulates the hardest. And really, it's like the world is like a gaslighting contest. The world is a contest for like narrative control. It really is. It's a separate video, but that's the way of the world, is narrative control. And then love, like I didn't know what love was. I thought like you try to get attention, you try to get people to like you, you suck up to people, you try to get people to respect you, you try to get people to think you're cool, you try to be like dominant and strong, you try to suck up to the people above you, and you try to like, you know, you try to have all these fake friends and whatever. I thought that was love. I thought love was like getting attention from people. And I think a lot of people are trapped in that very bad. And I think when you fall down that hole too much, you know, I think that's how narcissists come about. That trap of fake love they really fall into. You know, people think love is getting attention. People think love is carnal pleasure. I mean, separate video, but like the concept of people don't know what love is. People don't know what love is. People don't know what truth is. People think love is being like infatuated and obsessed with someone. People think love is like material possessions. People think love is a lot of things it's not. People have a very twisted up idea of what love is. And I know that I had a twisted up idea of what love was. And it's all twisted up. And in all this twisting and in all this, you know, good being subverted and being replaced with evil in a sneaky way, psychologically, in all that, it's like, let me get a drink of water here. But in all that, it's like we entirely lose our sense of who we are. We lose our sense of self-worth. Who we are just blends into the collective. And we don't even know who we are anymore. You know, it's like, who am I? My material possessions? My physical body? The clothes I'm wearing? My reputation? Who am I? Most people don't even know who they are. The truth about who we are is that we are a unique divine being created in the image of God. That's who we are. We are saved by the grace of Jesus Christ. That's who we are. You know, we have infinite power. That's who we are. Because we're connected to the infinite. That's who we are. But man, most people just think that they're their material possessions. They think that they are their thoughts. They think that they are their emotions. People have a very twisted up idea of their own identity. They don't know who they are. And then because you're so beaten down, you don't really stand up for yourself when you need to. When there's times where you really got to put your foot down and stand up for yourself and say no, you don't do it because you want to make people happy. You want to keep the status quo up. You don't want to make waves. So you just kind of end up taking people's crap. And then you find other people and you give the crap back to them, and the cycle just goes round and around. And most people have no idea. And I really realized this, like, when Jesus says, forgive them, for they know not what they do, it's like, a lot of the people that were putting Jesus up on the cross, they thought they were doing the right thing. Because there's societal programming, conditioning, which is going round and round and around their whole life. And it'll really twist you up to where you think that evil is good and that good is evil. And you think you got to follow these rules of society, and you think that because everyone around you is saying it, it's the right thing. And it's just, man, it gets you really, really confused. It gets you really confused. It gets you really twisted. Real twisted. And, you know, I want people to have the true voice of God, the true voice of the Good Shepherd who loves them in their mind. And that's my prayer. My Lord, my God, my Father in heaven, who is the Good Shepherd. O great Spirit, put your good voice in the minds of people and let them recognize the deceiver who pretends to be you. My Lord, my God, put your loving good voice in the minds of the people. Let it be done. And one more thing I want to add before I end. When people talk about like being deceived by the devil, I always thought of that in like something I knew, like giving into a carnal desire, something I knew was not the right thing to do, but I just kind of fell into it. And it goes deeper than that. There's things I really thought I was doing the right thing. There were things and situations in life where I really thought I was doing the right thing and I was doing evil. It's that scary. It's not a situation where it's like smoking some cigarettes. I know they're not healthy, but whatever, it's what I do. It's not that at all. It's like things where I really thought I was doing the right thing and I wasn't. I thought I was being a good person and I wasn't. And it's really just... And one thing I want to add also is like, I thought a lot of the narcissists and stuff were good people because my idea of good and evil was so twisted that I thought these weird evil people were good people. And I thought all the controlling BS was them trying to help me out. And just it's so twisted up. And I thought the love bombing was them being nice. And I mean, it led to that. This mentality led to that. It did. Man. All right, I'm going to end this video here. Thank you all so much for watching. This was a deep, trippy video, so thank you all for staying with me on this. God bless, and I'll see you next time.